outrun towards the finish line. Looks like it's finally going to be a lap time for the Alpine man. It's going to be a 128.2 at 8.8, putting him just behind Energy Dan in 11th place. And Mr. Wiggles in the Aston Martin looks like he has started his first flying lap of the session as well. Looked quite racy last week out in Monaco. Definitely one of the pace setters as he goes through Cobb's corner. Not taking as big of a risk through there. Of course, it is his banker lap, so just wanting to set a lap time on the board. As up ahead, that's the Alpine getting out of the way quite nicely there. So no impeding for Mr. Wiggles then. Setting himself up for a good exit onto the Wellington Straight. Losing a bit of battery, still 30% remaining. And then heading towards that braking, so still flat out through the skink. And then quite soon after, immediately onto the brakes. A little bit on the curb on the outside, but keeps it pointed in the right direction. And hitting the apex quite nicely indeed. So looking like a decent lap time for Mr. Wiggles. Where can this lap time bring him? Will it be inside the top 5 near his teammate potentially, as he is going to cross the line for a 127.7, putting him in P7.
Yes, it does there. Mr. Wiggles looking for redemption after the Monaco Grand Prix, because remember, him and Keith made contact and there was just the merest of margins there and a gap that didn't exist for I think it was Keith at the time, as Mr. Wiggles unfortunately beat him in that and felt like he lost the podium. And we're looking for redemption this time. Both Aston Martins in P6 and P7, so they're looking good so far. We know they're quite handy, both of them are, and I think Mr. Wiggles scored a podium back at the Australian Grand Prix and Dover finished in P4. So they're up there inside the top 8 of the Aston Martin. Sonic Hawk in the Kick Sauber looking very strong so far as well. Is the Indy driver down there in P9, just ahead of Matty by just a tenth of a second as well. Billy G is P11, as we know Energy Dan has already retired from this session because he crashed at the exit of this corner where Night Creed is coming right now through the left-hander of Cops flat out, and you've got to be very careful and mindful, as we see the Aston Martin hopefully get out of the way. Please get out of the way. And why are you not out of the way? Who is that Aston Martin? Is that Mr. Wiggles? It is. So Night Creed might have something to say about that one, but the Aston Martin just getting in the way. They're not acknowledging that the Williams driver, oh, he's not. Never mind then. He's 2.1 seconds down. I thought the way he was pushing, he was on a flying lap. So my mistake there. Apologies about that one, Mr. Wiggles. He didn't have to get out of the way because he was 2 seconds down already in the middle sector. Apex George is down in the first or middle sector by 0.2 of a second, so he's not clearly improving. Calvin, let's see what he's doing. 1 tenth down in the first sector. So on their second runs, I think majority of people are not finding improvement there as well. This track can be quite tricky indeed, especially the middle and last sector as well, as it's full of slow speed, mid speed corners and very quick indeed. Very important as well to get it right through those particular corners. Prep 1 in the Mercedes. He's coming towards now the right-hander, the double right-hander we go, as he slows the car down very nicely indeed, hits the apex on the entry there as well. We've seen multiple people as well just being very cautious in this last sector, not really pushing the limits so much. But as he exits the final 2 corners on this racetrack, using the battery, headed towards the final corner, what lap time is this going to be? And it's only P12, so quite a bit of distance between the guys there as well. A lot of big gaps in between different drivers here, as a lot of these drivers seem to be struggling at this stage in qualifying. Havlor goes wide at the exit of Cops. Ronnie goes up into P2. I think Ronnie is on a flying lap. Here he is through the right-hander. Ronnie, however, great qualifying as well, considering how messy it was back in Monaco. Look at this, 2.5 tenths off. Can he find any more time? He should be in the 26ers, but let's hope he can find more time. There's a Williams in the way, but he should get the way very, very shortly unless he starts his flying lap. He goes. But Ronnie now coming towards the final 2 corners. Can he match the pace of Apex George? He crossed the line and the answer is no, but he improves by 2.5 tenths of a second exactly as well. So great improvement there from the McLaren driver, getting closer and closer as Apex George is in the pit lane. Klausler mounting the curves through Maggots and Beckett, or Beckett and Maggots. 1 tenth up in the first set as he flicks it through Cops there. The car complying very well, a bit wide on the exit there too, but keeps it pinned, which you want to do to try and gain the maximum amount of lap time as we now head towards the left-hander, keeping it tight to the inside. Don't go out wide there because you will screw off speed. And you will score off the time too for good measure as we exit Luffield and Brooklands. Look at this, 2 tenths up in the sector for Klausler. This is his second lap time on a set of the soft compound tyres as he flicks it in for full speed and commitment down in towards the slow speed corners into the loop. And now coming through this left-hander we go, which is usually turn 3. And now pinned, foot to the floor, and in the pit lane he goes. So he doesn't feel like he can improve there either in the Ferrari. Ferrari Fat Boy, that is P17, not on the lap either. He's run out of fuel there, so he's not going to go for a flying lap time. As we come towards the dying stage of qualifying so far, it is Apex George on provisional pole position. He's only done one lap, and that one lap is good enough there for P1 as well. So his first lap time, a benchmark nobody else can beat. But of course, Apex George can definitely beat it. He just needs to find a bit more confidence as well, because usually drivers like me, I tend to peak on my first lap. I don't know what it is. I think I'm pushing the limits too hard in the second or third lap, because on your first lap you have no pressure. It's just a bank, a cycle lap, and it's just something to get the board. But I don't know what it is. For some reason, on my second or third or fourth lap, I just can't improve. Maybe I put myself under a bit too much pressure, and therefore can't deliver as well, because you're fighting against your delta. Your delta is constant. It shows up on the right-hand side, and it could be a visual distraction. I remember in the last games, that delta wasn't there unless you turned it on, or you wanted it on, but it's there constantly, and it may put drivers off, because if they see themselves dipping in the red zone, they try and find more time by braking later, carrying the speed through the corner, or just getting on the accelerator a bit too quickly as well to lose traction, just trying to find any sort of improvement raced against the delta. But Doran is currently on an improvement by 1/10 in the first sector, as Apex George then is out on the circuit. Look at this, 3/10 up. This is looking like to be a strong lap here for Doran in the Aston Martin. It could put him into P3 ahead of Nightcreed in the Williams there. Great qualifying, by the way, from Nightcreed in third place, but it could be displaced, as Doran could move up the order as he exits the final couple of corners very nicely. The car complying very well, smooth exits there as we now head towards the final two corners. What's this lap time going to be for Doran? Doran goes up into P3 in the Aston Martin, and just under 2/10 clear of Nightcreed in P4.
Good improvement indeed. What about his teammate though, Mr. Wiggles? He comes towards the final corner, quickly down in P7, but on a decent improvement so far. He goes to the P4, joining his teammate on the second row. So a good performance there from both of the Aston Martin boys, but I don't think they've got enough time to go for another one. So they will just hope that the cars behind him do not improve. Nightcreed made a mistake on his first lap back out. On his previous attempt, he went deep into this corner, and he does the exact same thing on this lap. So seems to be struggling to find any more time on his final runs, and currently struggling a little bit. Is to Williams, as Keeves will start his flying lap as well, and so does Apex George. He has just started his final flying lap. Let's see what he can do in the Red Bull. Can he find time on his final flying lap as he goes through sector 1, heading towards Maggots, and Chapel, though in reverse, and hasn't found some time in sector 1, but he's 0.04 of a second away, so still very much within the ballpark of trying to improve. Bit of a moment there mid-corner, but I don't think he lost too much time with that. So far it's a decent lap, but nothing special yet for the Red Bull, as he keeps his planted there through Cobb's corner and DRS Opendouw, heading towards the braking zone of Lovefield. Can he find any more time in the second part of this lap, as he turns in quite early, keeping it close to the inside curb, but not too close. If you hit that curb at the wrong angle, it could unsettle the rear end of your car. He accelerates outward onto the Wellington straight, and that is more like it. An improvement, 1.5 tenths up in the middle sector. Could be looking at a 26.7, maybe a 26.6 if he finds some more time in that final sector. As Dorman has retired from the session, he will start P3 at best. Very close to the inside there for Apex George, but I do wonder if he gets the exit speed that he wants as he comes towards the finish line. What's it going to be for the Red Bull? It's going to be a 126.525 for the brilliant final sector, and the advantage towards the McLaren of Ronnie is now 0.4 of a second. Now Ronnie, he has started his final flying lap as well with 0.4. It's going to be quite a task, but he already finds 1.5 tenths through sector 1, so a great start to his flying lap for Ronnie. Is there any driver out there who's looking to deny the pole position of Apex George? Currently the gaps are quite significant outside the top 6 as G improves to 11th place, but Matti goes up to P8 in the Red Bull, while we keep a side eye on the McLaren of Ronnie, as the drivers finishing their flying laps as well. Very tight to the inside there for the McLaren, also into the braking zone, looking quite decent so far throughout this lap. Oh, and that is a big moment on the exit as he hits the curb, and I think that might be the end of his attempt to steal away pole position. Let's see. He lost a bit of time with that, only just under a tenth up on his current lap time, so he might improve his time, but I don't think it's going to be enough to deny pole position from Apex George. Definitely going to be P2 because no improvements behind him. Calvady's come P4, just ahead of the two Ferraris, P5 and P6, all separating the two Aston Martins. So there goes Halver in P3, not a McLaren, but here comes running towards the finish line. It's going to be P2 with a decent improvement. Pole position will go to Apex George.
Down under in Monaco to the top here at the British GP. Both McLarens setting personal best, second and third place. They'll be absolutely delighted with that last time. Monaco was a struggle, but the gaining resurgence here are the Norwegian boys in P2 and P3. Apex George, the Brit, is on pole position ahead of Ronnie by 2 and a bit tenths of a second. Halflar in P3 ahead of Doran, Aston Martin driver, Calvin in P5 in the Mercedes, Klausler and Keith P6 and P7. Mr. Wiggles 8th in the other Aston Martin. Sonic Hawk, great qualifier for him in the Kick Sauber. Like Creed in P10 ahead of Matty. MCFC P12. Billy G is P13. Prev 1 P14 in the Mercedes. And there comes Oreo Glass in P15. Energy Dan 16th. BTL Wakey Joe P17. And Ferrari Fat Boy, who will start down in last place. But we'll see what happens in this race. This race has a special memory for me because I used to race here in SFR in 2019. I was a Division 1 driver, and I started at the back of the field because it was such a tricky, challenging, competitive grid. There were such quick drivers, and most of them have moved on to esports. In fact, one of them is now a Formula 1 driver, believe it or not. Isaac Hadjar used to race here in SFR, and I was in the race with him here in Silverstone too, all those years ago. Go look at the YouTube channel to find that. But it is true indeed. And I started P16, finished in P3. Isaac Hadjar retired from the race, and it was a very good podium indeed. And it was so difficult. My only points that season too. That's how competitive this grid was in Division 1. It was so tight and so difficult as well. You had to be in your aim game, you had to have the pace all the time, but those guys were just too much a challenge and a match for me. And some of them as well, esports drivers as well, in high esports territory as well, doing well for themselves and showing some great, tremendous pace as esports drivers would normally do. But yeah, Silverstone does hold a special memory. My first ever podium in SFR about 7 years ago as well, back when I was very young indeed. But 7 years later in Division 2 we commentated for it, and I know I'm not commentating for Division 1 no more because I'm usually the Div 1 commentator, but Division 2 is always a joyous and always great commentator as well. By the way, I didn't want to interrupt your flow, Milan, but I was streaming on the wrong channel, my own channel, but we switched back to the SFR channel as well, so I didn't want to interrupt as well to ruin your momentum. But we are back on this normal channel in SFR, and hopefully we can have a great race here. It's sunny Silverstone, a complete contrast to the weather now in the UK because we had a heat wave last week and now it is raining this week. Forecasted to be raining in the UK, or shall I say in my area, in the next 7 days. So looking forward to that. I don't really like the rain, but it is cooler temperatures at least as well. But it won't really help and solve my hay fever as well because I mean, me and Milan, we got really bad hay fever. Eyes are itchy, throats are tingly, runny noses, etc. Coughs and sneezes, you name it. We're allergic to pollen and we don't like being in the field, but we do like being in the commentary box, commentating for you guys as well. So do apologise if you hear us struggling to talk, or if you hear us making any noises, but we'll try our absolute best and hopefully be a great race here. In reverse at Silverstone. Silverstone as well, we haven't really mentioned history, but it's been around since 1950 and won by Farina in the Alfa Romeo Alfa Romeo, sorry, the first one. I think Jim Clark was the first British driver to win around here as well. Then we had Nigel Mansell and we got formation lap is underway, but Damon Hill, there we go. Damon Hill is a driver I wanted to mention as well. Classic British drivers that won. Jenson Button, I don't think he's ever won his home Grand Prix either. Has he finished the podium before here? I'm not quite sure. But Lewis Hamilton, the most famous British driver, the most successful British driver, 7-time world champion. He's won here 9 times as well in the past. He debuted back in 2007, and in 2008 he won by over a minute in the wet conditions. His teammate Heikki Kovalainen, the Finnish driver, took his first pole position, but he couldn't quite defend the mighty charger Hamilton. I think Kovalainen spun plenty of times as well, and it was a double Braun podium, not Braun, Honda podium. It was Rubens Barrichello P2, and they had a shocking season, did Honda, barely any points, and all of a sudden Rubens Barrichello finished in P2. I think it was Nick Heifeld or a P3, I think it was. I'm quite sure who at the time. But yes, it was a great podium indeed as well, as Honda was struggling and Barrichello put it over to P2, and Hamilton won by over a minute to win his first British GP. And the rest is history as well. Lewis Hamilton's last winner out here was 2024 when he took that fantastic victory. It was one of the best races of the season in 2024, Silverstone. And Silverstone, even though I'm a Brit myself, can't deny it's one of the best circuits on the calendar. Every time we come here, it always demonstrates and displays some great racing indeed. And especially last season in 2025 when Nico Hülkenberg took his first ever F1 podium. And I'm really glad it came because I've been a long time Hülkenberg fan as well. I've been watching him since I was young. I remember when he took pole back in Brazil 2010. He almost won in 2012 at the Brazilian Grand Prix. And I've been waiting for a long time for him to get a podium as well, and thought it would never come. But it did last year. He started at the back of the field and finished in P3, and Norris and Piastri P1 and P2, and Verstappen as well, winning the 2023 British GP. And Carlos Sainz got his first ever win around here in 2022 as well, with that great drive to get on pole position in the wet conditions. And I think Verstappen had a puncher because he was fighting with Schumacher at the time. But 18 drivers then line up on the grid for this preempted race. The climatic is building up, and hopefully the atmosphere will be absolutely electric as we wait for the lights on the gantry. All eyes to the lights, and Apex George is on the hardcore powered tyres, so he's going for that longer stint. He may not get the grip initially up the line, so it gives both McLarens all the impetus they need to try and jump him. Here we go then, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is jump starts to the back of the field, but we're underway for the British GP. Does George get the launch off the line? He does. He occupies first place. And in the background, we can see Mercedes and Aston Martin getting super close to spawn. The Aston Martin pushes to the inside there as we've got a few jockeying for position. Calvin gets ahead of Klausler. He's out of shape, and Klausler goes back. He's up into P4 as we see Calvin lose 2 more places there. The Aston Martin drivers trying to fight back as Doran, especially, who had lost a few places, is now up into P6 ahead of Calvin. Calvin's had a shocking start so far. Now he's been overwhelmed by the Ferrari driver as well, going side by side, but almost 3 abreast as well, going into towards Chapel, but one of them backs out, as it's the wise thing to do. You don't want to go side by side, especially through a corner like this, where it's so twisty and so tight to D. But George got the launch he needed and occupies first place. He orientates the lead, and this is good for him initially as well. Not to get jumped by the medium runners, but the medium runners will probably have a slight advantage over him, especially with the grip levels. But George, 0.8 of a second clear ahead of Ronnie, as we've got a few more people there in the background, fighting away in the midfield. Sonic Hawk under pressure from the Alpine of MCFC, who has lost a few places too in the Alpine, with Billy G right behind, who starts at P11, and now he's down his P15. Quite a chaotic lap so far, but Klausler, he's up to P4. His teammate Keith has lost a few places. In fact, I say lost a few. He's only lost 1. He's down to P8, but Klausler, a great start. Mr. Wiggles, a great start. He's got 3 places, up into P5.
Such a tight corner as the first corner around this reverse layout, and you can definitely see it caused some trouble throughout the field, but somehow everyone has remained in one piece. So there's still some fighting going on at the back of the field, and I think a few drivers heading in towards the pit lane. I think it's only Nightcreed, so his great qualifying form unfortunately unravels at the end of the first lap, as he is forced to make a pit stop, as Calvin is going round the outside there of Doran, who has got grass on his tires. Not sure what happened there to the Aston Martin, but he was all out of shape and losing a bunch of position behind it. Keys fighting out with Wakey Joe in the Alpine, but the Alpine is 1 or 2 drivers who's got a drive-through penalty, so he will be disappearing within this or next lap, and so will Energy Down, unfortunately, in the RB. So his poor luck continuing on into this race as well. It seems like not the great start he was hoping for, but at the front, Apex George almost building a gap of over 1 second towards Ronnie. Now Ronnie is on the medium tire, but this track is so incredibly tough with tire wear. Smetty gets now ahead of the Alpine, but this track is so tough with tire wear. I think one of the highest tracks with tire wear on the calendar. So you definitely don't want to be pushing those mediums as much as possible. And I definitely think we can expect a lot of 2-stoppers in this race. Otherwise, they will be running in tire troubles and maybe potentially into puncture territory. But that's something we'll see in a few laps time. But I think the mediums are completely worn out by around lap 6 or 7 or something like that. As we see some fighting it out wheel to wheel there between Energy Dan and Sonic Hawk. And Sonic Hawk on the outside into the braking zone. A great move indeed, fighting himself up into 12th place, ahead of Energy Dan, who should be pulling into the pit lane on this lap or maybe onto the next one to serve his drive-through penalty. It's Wakey Joe into the pit lane to serve his, but Energy Dan will continue on for at least one more lap as she runs a little bit wide out of that final corner. But at the front, it is Apex George for a brief moment, had a gap of over a second towards Ronnie. As MCSC, these first drivers to pick up a 3-second time penalty for track limits, but Ronnie just doing enough to stay within DRS range and trying to stay with the leaders. Halvor is not quite able to do the same thing. He's 1.4 seconds behind his teammate. That's Keeves with the DRS, gets past Doran, and so does Matti. So Doran down to P9 in the Aston Martin. Started in P4 and now P9 by halfway through lap 3. So not the start he was hoping for. Was his teammate is busy fighting out with Calvin and Keeves then in P7. So Apex George, he's on the hard tires, so is Keeves and Sonic Hawk. Everyone else started there on the medium in the background. That was someone going very, very wide indeed. It's Energy Dan fighting it out with Sonic Hawk and losing control, but saving his car beautifully there. But Energy Dan, not sure what happened. That looked really, really strange on board with the RB. But he was completely sideways there, and that's not going to help his tire wear in the slightest. But I think he's going to be coming into the pit lane at the end of this lap time anyway to serve his drive-through penalty. But a bit of a moment there between himself and the kick Sauber. For the end of lap 3, Apex George leads by 1 second over only 2 seconds behind. It is Halvor who's struggling to keep up, and he's under big pressure now from Klusser in the Ferrari, looking to take away that final spot on the podium as we go on to lap 4. And he's bringing Mr. Wiggles behind him with him as Energy Dan for a good measure picks up a 10-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane, as if it couldn't get any worse for the RB driver. Yeah, that is going to add up to his penalty list, because he is going to have to serve that at his next pit stop. As Klusser with the help of DRS, is he going to be able to get close enough? I don't think so. So he's going to stay behind for the time being. It's Apex George has brought the gap towards Ronnie over 1 second now.
Surprised that Klaus is still stuck behind Havlar, because he seems to have great pace but just can't seem to find an opening. Oh, I thought he had a moment there going on towards Maggots and Beckett's, but saves the car and keeps it pointing in the right direction for his sake. But on his second lap, he did exceed track limits at the exit Cops. He went wide and stayed on the outside, and as a result, picked up a track limit violation. So one more of those, he has 2 already. One more of those is a 3-second penalty for the man that finished P2 twice this season, and a sprint race 2 to go with his tally. Now, no DRS on this back straight, headed down in towards the loop. So he has to stay behind for the time being. This is a flat out right hander, it should be. That's why there's no DRS on the straight. But not flat out in the race conditions, because of heavy fuel and tyres being degraded so heavily as well. You can see the tyres being chewed and shredded up at this stage of the Grand Prix. They don't look very healthy. And I can tell you as well that this track is absolutely brutal tyre wear. I had a race in Division 1 last season, and I finished in P2. No, I finished in P3 because I liked that session. But I did finish in P3 at the end, but I had to slow down. As we can see, Havlar off the track, fully wide as well, which may give all the impetus and encouragement Clausen needs to get past him. He's right to the back of McLaren's tail. Should he get past him on the Wellington hanger straight? We're about to find out, but let's see if he gets the release he needs right now with the DRS wide open and the battery too. But he's too far behind to make any sort of move going in towards Chapel there. So just stuck behind McLaren for the time being, caused a big DRS show behind him as well. But George is looking so comfortable so far in first place. A 2.1 second gap. This couldn't have gone any better for George so far in P1. A lot of work to do towards the end of the D, because he himself will be on the mini compound tyres. So what he needs to do is take those hard compound tyres a long, long way in this race, because I did about 10 laps on my mediums, and that wasn't even enough either, because I tried to do some tyre saving, and I think Wiki Yo has gone for a spin down there in the first 3 corners then, unfortunately for him. So he's dropping backwards and in last place and on new tyres as well. But I pitted on lap 9 or lap 10, and I had to slow down in the last 3 laps because my tyres were literally on 9%. I thought my tyres were dying, and the guy behind me as well were on much better tyres, and he was hunting me down, chasing me down like a steam train. So I had to do a lot of tyre saving whilst trying to keep the guy behind. Very counterintuitive to what I needed to do, but I just managed to do it, and I kept him at bay. 2/10 it was towards the line when I finished in front of him. So yeah, very, very miscall indeed, and good judgment indeed. But yeah, this track is just so tough on tyres, you know, and that's why I got to manage them in the first stint. You can't afford to fight too hard in this stint. I know it's very counterproductive, isn't it? Very counterintuitive. You want to push and make ground as much as you can, but you got to watch out for the tyre wear as well, because 2-stop is just so much slower around this track and anywhere else, because the pit loss around here is huge. The deficit to make up, you won't be able to do it no matter how quick you are either. So that's why a one stop is the quicker way to go, whilst doing some managing in the first and second stint as well. So you got to push hard as you can, but at the same time, got to manage, and very counterintuitive what you need to do as well. The Aston Martin and Mr. Wiggles, they get out of shape going towards Maggots, but Keith's Mercedes on Calvert goes off the track there. You can see the understeer he had to unfortunately encounter going in towards Cops, and now Mr. Keith is up into P6 there in the Ferraris, also the hard compound tyres too, so expect him to make some ground up in the next few laps once these medium compound tyres reach the end of their peak performance. Look at Ronnie, and here comes Klauser around the outside, and he's finally taken his rival. He is now up into P3, and it's a long time coming. He has lost so much time between himself, Ronnie, and Apex George, and Havlar has fallen to P4. Look at the Ferrari in the background going wide. That is Calvary trying to go around the outside of Keith. Keith has the inside line, but will Calvary trying to he squeezed him off the track there. Very naughty indeed from Keith, as he may have lost traction, but Calvary will be happy about that one. In the pit lane goes Matty, and that is a very early pit stop indeed, so may encounter some tyre troubles towards the end of this race, but you can definitely see that a lot of people on the mini-compound tyres are struggling at this stage in this race.
Indeed, I would be surprised if anyone is going to be able to pull off the one stop, just because how high that tyre wear is. It requires insane tyre management. You can already see at the end of lap 7 or lap 6, these drivers already having to make their first pit stop onto the hards, and they're definitely not going to make it to the end. Doing 19 laps on the hards if they can only do 6 on the medium. So definitely a 2-stop for these guys, as Havler comes out of the pit lane in clean air, which will help him out. But the driver behind him is Matty, who was quite close to the back of the Red Bull. But that clean air will certainly help him, because those guys at the front are absolutely struggling now on those medium tires. You can see the gap now between Apex George and Ronnie is almost 4 seconds now, because his hard tires are definitely in the advantage compared to Ronnie in the McLaren. Now it is 4 seconds, so we're wondering to see when these drivers are going to put into the pit lane, as MCFC gets another 3-second time penalty. Clusser now has been released into clean air, but I do wonder if it's going to help him, because he will be losing so much time on this lap compared to Havler. I think he's still going to come out behind him when he makes his pit stop. As Ronnie comes into the pit lane in the second McLaren, Clusser will continue on for one more lap. Mr. Wiggles into the pit lane as well. You have to be really mindful of the pit entry speed limit here, as if you have the racing line on, you have to brake way earlier than it indicates, otherwise you will get a 10-second time penalty for speeding, which is something that Darlon has done in the second Aston Martin. They are double stacking, by the way, so I'm not sure why they will be doing that, but I don't think he loses much time with that, as Mr. Wiggles now will be out of his pit box. In comes the second of Dora, may lose a second or two with that, but Ronnie will come out of the pit lane. Should still be ahead though of Havler, because there was quite a big gap between the two McLarens. So here comes Ronnie out of the pit lane onto the grass there for a brief moment, but into clean air and trying to gain that time back now on Apex George. Havler gets ahead. He is around 3-4 seconds behind his teammate, but there's still two drivers out there on the mediums who haven't made their first pit stop yet. It's Clusser and Calvert. That's Keeves Clusser lets Keeves by, so good teamwork there between the two Ferraris. Of course, Keeves will be much quicker on these hard tires compared to the dying mediums of Clusser. I do wonder if he's going to come with the pit lane at the end of this lap to put on his first set of hard tires. You can see how much graining there is on the fronts and the rears. So definitely think that a pit stop will be coming very soon indeed for the Ferrari. But look at the gap now between the top two. It's almost 10 seconds. Apex George into the pit lane as well after only 8 laps on the hard tires. That is very early indeed. Because if you can only do 8 laps on hard tires, how is he even going to make a 2-stop? Because he will be on 16 on his second hard tires, and he still needs to do 10 more laps. He don't have 3 sets of hard tires, so he definitely needs to do a bit more tire saving on his next 2 stints. So that could make things quite interesting, because there was a bit of a gap between himself and second place before these pit stops. But if he has to do more tire management, then a victory will certainly not be as certain as it may have looked like before these pit stops. So Ronnie, he will come up behind the Red Bull, that is for sure, but how much is the question. With the undercut staying, it's still going to be around 3-4 seconds like it was. 3.54 seconds, yeah it is. But Apex George now onto the mediums, but he really needs to do some great tire saving on this stint, otherwise he simply will not make it to the end on a 2-stop. As Klasser also has made his pit stop, unsurprisingly, but look at Calvert still going on those mediums. He's doing a longer stint than Apex George has managed on the hards, as Mr. Wiggles gets ahead of Matty for 7th place. So trying to get those positions back now in pursuit of Havler. Now he is also on the mediums, so it's no surprise that he has got the pace advantage at this stage of the race. But those tires of Calvert must be nearing the 90% range at least by this time. I definitely think he's going to be into the pit lane at the end of this lap. Otherwise he might risk a puncture, but great to be able to extend his stint this long, because it definitely will help him out in the second part of this race. Keeves is gonna come into the pit lane as well after only 9 laps, so it looks like a lot of these drivers will be struggling with the tires at the end of this race. We might see some punctures, but Calvert is still gonna continue on, going on to lap 10, doing 9-10 laps on these mediums. Surely he might be nearing a puncture right now. That's a big risk to take for Calvert, but if he makes this work, then he might have a really good chance of getting a great result here at Silverstone.
Exactly.